The lumina of the Vexel conclave pulsed with a slow, cold rhythm, a heartbeat of pure mathematics cast in crystalline light. It refracted through the grand chamber, painting transient constellations upon the faceted walls and the silent, floating figures of the praetors. Here, in the heart of a civilization that had outlasted stars, thought was not spoken but broadcast in waves of modulated photons, a silent, perfect communion of logic. Yet today the light was troubled, its harmonies laced with a dissonant chord of uncertainty. The subject of their focus, a mote of cosmic dust called Earth, and the baffling species that inhabited it, had become the source of this profound disquiet. Praetor Xylos floated at the apex of the assembly, his own crystalline form a complex lattice of ancient, grown silicon. His thoughts, usually as clear and ordered as the sacred geometries that defined his people, felt clouded. For cycles, the conclave had observed the humans. They had watched from the veiled darkness of subspace, their sensor arrays drinking in the chaotic torrent of signals that poured from the small blue world. They had seen a species at war with itself, a species that built monuments of breathtaking beauty only to shatter them in bursts of primitive chemical fury. They saw a species that reached for the stars with one hand while holding a blade to its own throat with the other. To the Vexel, whose entire existence was a testament to stability, to the serene and unwavering adherence to cosmic law, humanity was an aberration, an error in the grand equation. A pulse of sharp, insistent light emanated from matriarch Oris, her form glowing with the hard, uncompromising brilliance of a dying star. Her thought broadcast cut through the chamber's low hum. The anomaly persists. It grows more erratic. Their expansion is no longer confined to their stellar cradle. They have begun to seed their chaotic biological signature on neighboring worlds. It is a contagion of illogic, and it spreads. Xylos focused his own internal light, shaping a response that was both measured and firm. A contagion, matriarch, or a form of existence we have yet to properly quantify. Their patterns are complex, not merely chaotic. There is a signal within their noise. We have observed their art, their music, their philosophical inquiries. These are not the actions of a mindless plague. The matriarch's light sharpened, its edges serrated with impatience. These are luxuries of a species that does not comprehend the finality of the universal calculus. They mourn their dead with inefficient displays of emotion, yet they create weapons that could render their entire biosphere sterile. They compose symphonies that speak of universal harmony, then turn their world into a cacophony of conflict. They are a paradox, praetor, and paradoxes are points of instability. The universe, by its very nature, corrects instability. It is our solemn duty, as custodians of this sector, to be the instruments of that correction. The word hung in the silent chamber, correction, a Vexel euphemism of chilling finality. It meant the clean, sterile, and absolute removal of a variable that threatened the integrity of the system. It would be done not with malice, but with the dispassionate precision of a gardener pruning a diseased branch. A cleansing wave of disruptive energy, and the human experiment would be over. Their art, their wars, their symphonies, their sorrow, all of it would be reduced to a quiet, stable state of elementary particles. Order restored. A younger praetor, Valen, pulsed a hesitant query, his light a soft, inquisitive indigo. We have never before encountered a species with this level of emergent complexity. Our protocols for correction are based on runaway biologicals or nascent machine intelligences that threaten systemic collapse. The humans do not fit these criteria. They threaten only themselves. To intervene would be to posit a new theorem, one that states we are arbiters of philosophical, not just physical, order. Matriarch Oris's response was swift and unyielding. Their philosophical disorder is the root of the physical threat. Their belief in concepts like free will and hope are delusions that allow them to defy predictable patterns. A species that cannot be predicted cannot be controlled. A species that cannot be controlled is a rogue variable. The potential for them to disrupt the great balance is not a risk. It is a mathematical certainty, however distant the timeline. The conclave has always acted on certainty. Xylos felt the weight of millennia pressing in on him. The Vexel had witnessed the birth and death of empires. They had seen species rise to glory and crumble into cosmic dust. They had seen intelligence take myriad forms, from gaseous sentiences in nebulae to silicon-based life on molten worlds. In all that time, their prime directive had been observation, non-interference, and the preservation of the universal equilibrium. Core. Action was a tool of last resort, a sorrowful but necessary act of cosmic hygiene. But this felt different. It felt like passing judgment not on a species, but on a form of consciousness itself. He focused his thoughts, broadcasting them to the entire conclave with a gravity that demanded attention. We speak of them as a paradox, but perhaps the flaw is in our perception. We perceive the universe as a closed system, a set of equations moving towards a final, inevitable solution. Our civilization is a monument to that belief. We have perfected ourselves, purged all randomness, all emotion, all that we deemed inefficient. We are static, eternal, and unchanging. We are, in essence, the solution to our own equation. He let that thought settle, the light in the chamber seeming to dim as the praetors considered its implications. But what if the universe is not a closed system? What if it is an open-ended theorem, one that constantly generates new axioms? The humans are not static. They are a cascade of constant, chaotic change. They fail, they learn, they adapt. Their self-destructive tendencies are matched only by their resilience. Their capacity for cruelty is mirrored by a capacity for profound empathy. They are not an answer, they are a perpetual question. A question the universe does not need, Oris countered, her light flaring. They are noise, and the purpose of a custodian is to ensure the purity of the signal. And what is the signal, matriarch? Xylos pressed, his own light growing in intensity. Is it the silent, predictable rotation of galaxies, the slow decay of matter into cold energy? Is the ultimate purpose of existence a perfect, eternal silence, or is it consciousness itself? And if it is consciousness, are we to declare our form of it the only valid expression? We have observed them for centuries. We have translated their literature, analyzed their art. There is a concept that appears again and again, a driving force that underpins their most self-destructive and their most transcendent acts. They call it love. We have no mathematical equivalent for this concept. It is a variable that defies every model we have ever constructed. To erase them would be to erase something we fundamentally do not understand. That is not an act of logic, it is an act of fear. The word fear resonated through the conclave like a physical shock. Fear was an impurity, a corrupted emotional signal the Vexel had purged from their own consciousness eons ago. To accuse the conclave of acting out of it was the gravest of challenges. The light from the other praetors shifted, flickering with colors of contemplation, doubt, and from Oris's contingent, a cold, hard anger. Before the matriarch could deliver her scathing rebuttal, a new light pulsed from the chamber's central nexus, the custodian of external intersections. It was a pure, unfiltered white, the color of raw data, praetors, a development. The anomaly, the humans, they are aware of our observation. A wave of disbelief washed through the conclave. It was impossible. Vexel observation technology was flawless. It operated from a pocket dimension, drawing no energy, leaving no trace. It was the ghost in the machine of spacetime, a perfect, undetectable eye. The custodian's light continued, calm and steady. They have not breached our stealth. They have deduced it. They analyzed infinitesimal gravitational and temporal distortions at the quantum level, fluctuations our own systems considered to be background noise. They theorized that such noise could only be the byproduct of a sustained, non-local observation field. They have spent the equivalent of their last 2 generations building a device to communicate across this theoretical boundary. The silence in the chamber was no longer one of contemplative thought. It was the silence of profound shock. A species that had yet to achieve unified interstellar travel, a species still bickering over resources on their single planet, had theoretically conceived of and then engineered a device to speak to their invisible gods. And now the custodian's light pulsed with a final, momentous datum. They are using it. They are sending a message. They are hailing us. The chamber seemed to shrink, the vast, crystalline hall suddenly feeling claustrophobic. The debate was no longer theoretical. The paradox was no longer a distant variable to be observed and calculated. It was knocking at the door. And the Vexel, for the first time in an age, did not know what to do. The conclave, the pinnacle of logic and order, was faced with a choice that no equation could solve. To answer the call would be to acknowledge the humans as peers, to engage with the chaos. To ignore it or to proceed with the correction would be to admit that Praetor Xylos was right. It would be an act of fear. Matriarch Oris's light burned with a cold fire. Let them speak. Let us hear the noise they wish to add to the universe before we silence it. Open the channel. The decision was made. A section of the chamber wall dissolved into a swirling vortex of shimmering light, a window into the raw, unfiltered data stream the humans were projecting. There was no image, no sound in the conventional sense. Instead, it was a cascade of pure information, a structured sequence of mathematical principles, starting with the most basic constants of the universe. The value of pi, the charge of an electron, the fine structure constant. It was a greeting written in the universal language of physics, a clear, unambiguous statement. We are here. We know you are there. We are intelligent. Then the data shifted. It moved beyond pure math into chemistry, biology, and then with breathtaking audacity into art. The Vexel were flooded with the raw conceptual data of a human symphony, the emotional architecture of a poem, the complex interplay of color and form in a painting. It was chaotic, overwhelming, and utterly baffling. They were showing the Vexel their soul, a concept as alien to the crystalline predators as solid matter. Finally, the stream resolved into a simple, direct message, translated by the conclave's logic engines from its conceptual roots into a form they could understand. The message was not a plea for mercy, nor a threat of defiance. It was an invitation. We know you are watching. We do not know your nature or your intent. We see you as you see us, a variable in a grand and mysterious universe. We invite you to a dialogue. We have sent a vessel to the coordinates you are observing us from, a place we have designated as a point of contact. We come in peace with the hope of mutual understanding. The message ended. The data vortex collapsed and the chamber wall solidified, leaving the conclave in a silence more profound than any they had ever known. They had sent a ship to the location of their hidden, undetectable observation post. It was a gesture of such impossible trust, such reckless faith, that it bordered on madness. Or it was a display of confidence so absolute that it was a threat in itself. Praetor Xylos felt a sensation for which he had no name. It was a resonance deep within his crystalline structure, a feeling of something vast and unknown cresting the horizon. He looked at the hard, unyielding light of matriarch Horus and saw, for the first time, not the certainty of logic, but the rigidity of dogma. We will meet them, Xylos broadcast, his own light flaring with a newfound conviction. We will see this paradox for ourselves. The time for observation is over. The time for understanding has begun. The Vexel conclave, for the first time in its long history, had agreed to meet a new variable, and the universe, in its infinite and silent wisdom, held its breath. The Vexel vessel designated for the encounter was not a warship. The concept was almost vulgar to them. It was a conveyance of pure thought, a craft sculpted from solidified light and warped spacetime, designed to traverse the void with minimal disturbance to the cosmic fabric. It was a thing of perfect, silent grace. As it emerged from subspace into the designated coordinates, a barren sector of interstellar space between two aging stars, Praetor Xylos stood within its central chamber, a smaller echo of the great conclave hall. With him were Valen and a retinue of analysts, their crystalline forms arrayed in a precise, harmonic pattern. Matriarch Horus was not present, but her disapproval was a palpable weight, a cold shadow on the otherwise pristine light of their mission. Before them, a vast pane of manipulated spacetime offered a perfect, distortion-free view of the void. And in that void, waiting, was the human vessel. It was profoundly ugly. That was Xylos's first, unfiltered thought, a flicker of aesthetic repulsion he immediately suppressed as illogical. The Vexel created things of perfect symmetry and mathematical beauty. The human ship was a chaotic assembly of modules, struts, and protrusions. It was asymmetrical, functional, and bore the scars of its journey through the cosmos. Micrometeoroid impacts, radiation scoring, the subtle patina of a thing that had moved through the physical, messy universe rather than gliding serenely above it. It was not a sculpture of light. It was a machine of metal and fire. Sensor analysis is complete, Praetor pulsed one of the analysts. The vessel is primitive. Its energy signature is based on controlled fusion, a brute force method. Its hull is a simple alloy. It possesses rudimentary kinetic energy shielding but no advanced reality distortion fields. Its weaponry appears to be a mixture of focused light emitters and projectile launchers. By our metrics, its combat capability is negligible. Xylos absorbed the data. Negligible. A child's toy. And yet this was the vessel a species sent to meet the unknown, powerful entity they knew was watching them. The sheer, irrational bravery of it was unsettling. They are hailing us, another analyst pulsed. Audio frequencies. Primitive but direct method. Translate and display, Xylos commanded, his focus absolute. A voice filled the chamber. It was not the pure, conceptual data of the initial message. It was a sound, shaped by a biological larynx and lungs, full of strange harmonics and undertones. It was a female voice, and the Vexel translation engines rendered it with perfect clarity, though they could not capture the intangible quality of its tone, a calm, resonant gravity. This is Ambassador Alara Vance of the Terran Unity, aboard the diplomatic vessel Odyssey. We are transmitting on all frequencies in peace. We acknowledge your presence. We are honored to make first contact. Xylos considered the words, ambassador, diplomatic vessel, peace, honor. These were concepts tied to social structures, to emotion, to the very noise the conclave disdained. Yet they were delivered with a profound sense of purpose. Respond, Xylos pulsed to his communications officer. Use their own method. Synthesize a voice. Tell them we are the Vexel. We acknowledge their presence. We are here to observe the dialogue. A synthesized Vexel voice, flat and devoid of inflection, broadcast the message. There was a pause from the human ship. Xylos could almost imagine the beings inside, their fragile organic brains processing this sterile, alien response. What would they do? Would they show fear now? Aggression? The voice of Alara Vance returned, its calm unshaken. Vexel, we thank you for your response. We understand that our nature may be difficult to parse. We have brought with us data archives, cultural records, and scientific knowledge to share, should you be willing. We wish to understand you as well. Our first question, if you will permit it, is a simple one. What is your intention? The directness of the question was staggering. It bypassed all protocol, all posturing. It was a question aimed at the very heart of the Vexel's dilemma. Xylos felt the curious stares of his retinue. The conclave had not given him a directive on this. His purpose was to gather data, to assess the anomaly. He was not authorized to declare an intention that had not yet been finalized. He shaped his response carefully. Intention is a complex concept. Our purpose is to understand the universe and to maintain its fundamental balance. Your species represents a significant deviation from predictable patterns. Our intention is to quantify this deviation. There was another, longer pause. The human ship hung there in the darkness, a small, stubborn piece of ordered matter against the infinite void. When the ambassador spoke again, her voice carried a new depth, a subtle shift that the translation engines flagged as sincere. Quantify, we understand. You see us as an equation you cannot solve. That is a fair assessment. From our perspective, the universe is not a problem to be solved, but a story to be told. Perhaps our two perspectives can find a common language. She paused. To facilitate this, we would like to show you something, not data, not a simulation, a live visual feed from our home system. We believe it is important for you to see what we are, not just what we broadcast. Xylos considered the offer, a live feed. It was a gesture of profound transparency. What could they possibly show him that their centuries of observation had not already revealed? Their wars, their pollution, their chaotic cities, it seemed a naive and pointless gesture, and yet his core directive was to understand. To refuse would be illogical. We will observe, his synthesized voice replied. The view screen before him flickered. The image of the human ship was replaced by a new vista. It was the human home system, as seen from a fixed observation point near their star. The blue-green jewel of Earth was there, but it was not the focus. The focus was everything else. Xylos felt his internal processors struggle to categorize the sheer scale of what he was witnessing. The system was swarming with vessels, not a fleet in the military sense, but a civilization in motion. There were vast, cylindrical ships, miles long, their hulls pocked with lights that represented thousands of self-contained habitats. Generation ships, the analysts pulsed, their purpose to carry populations on centuries-long journeys. There were skeletal frames of new vessels under construction in high orbit, tended by swarms of tiny automated drones. There were gargantuan spherical ships that seemed to be consuming the asteroid belt, processing the raw material and extruding it as finished components. There were delicate web-like structures that shimmered with captured starlight, vast energy collectors powering the whole impossible enterprise. And among them, woven into this tapestry of creation and expansion, were the warships. They were sleek, dark, and angular, utterly distinct from the civilian craft. They did not patrol aggressively. They held sentinel positions, silent guardians watching over the bustling, chaotic dance of their civilization. They were a shield, not a sword. This was not a military force preparing for conquest. This was a species building its future among the stars, and the warships were merely one tool among many, a necessary precaution in a universe they knew to be vast and potentially dangerous. What you are seeing, Ambassador Vance's voice explained, its calm tone a stark contrast to the staggering vision on the screen, is the Exodus. Our homeworld is precious to us. It is our cradle, the place of our birth. But we have learned that a single cradle is a fragile thing. We are not conquering the stars, Vexel. We are moving into them. We are building new homes. We are carrying with us our art, our science, our history, our children. This is not an act of aggression. It is an act of preservation, an act of hope. Xylos was silent. He had seen this data in fragments and isolated reports, but he had never seen it like this, presented as a single, coherent whole. The Vexel had perceived these activities as separate, chaotic endeavors, resource extraction here, ship construction there, population movement somewhere else. They had seen it as the frantic, disorganized scrabbling of a species on the brink of collapse, desperately trying to escape its self-inflicted wounds. They had missed the pattern. They had missed the purpose. It was not chaos, it was growth, a form of growth so explosive, so dynamic, so fundamentally alive that the static, perfect Vexel civilization had no framework to comprehend it. They were not a plague spreading through the galaxy. They were a seed bursting forth from its shell. The scale Valen pulsed, his own light flickering with awe. The sheer material and energy cost is beyond our projections for a species at their technological level. They are operating at an efficiency that should be impossible for a biologically driven, non-hive intelligence. You may wonder how we accomplish this, Vance's voice continued as if she had heard Valen's thought. How a species as divided and conflicted as ours can work towards a common goal of this magnitude. It is because we have embraced our core paradox. We are individuals, each with our own thoughts, fears, and dreams, but we are also a collective. We can choose to unite for a purpose greater than ourselves. Our diversity, which you may see as a weakness, a source of chaos, is our greatest strength. Every perspective, every idea, every dissenting voice adds to the whole. We do not seek a single, perfect solution. We seek an infinite variety of possibilities. The screen shifted again. It now showed a close-up of one of the massive construction arrays. Beings in environmental suits, fragile and small, were crawling over its surface, performing delicate tasks. Below them, in the vastness of space, the curve of their planet was visible. A blue marble swirling with white clouds. It looked so small, so vulnerable. And yet it had given birth to this incredible, defiant explosion of life. Xylos felt the foundations of his Vexel worldview begin to crack. For eons, his people had believed that the path to transcendence was through purification, through the shedding of individuality and emotion, through becoming one with the perfect, silent logic of the cosmos. They had achieved a state of timeless, unchanging perfection. But looking at the human endeavor, he realized they had not achieved transcendence. They had achieved stasis. They were a perfect crystal, beautiful and unchanging. The humans were a raging, glorious fire, consuming, changing, and creating everything in their path. Who was to say which was the superior state of being? Matriarch Horus and the Conclave must see this. Valen pulsed urgently. They are proceeding from a flawed dataset. This changes the entire equation. Does it, Xylos thought, broadcasting only to Valen? Or does it merely confirm her fears from a different perspective? The matriarch fears their unpredictability. This is unpredictability made manifest on a system-wide scale. This is a species that has decided to rewrite the laws of galactic civilization not through conquest, but by simply refusing to be bound by them. Ambassador Vance spoke again, her voice soft but carrying an immense weight. We know you have the power to extinguish us. Our sensors may be primitive compared to yours, but they can detect the echoes of vast energies. We know that we are, in your eyes, a risk, an anomaly to be corrected. We cannot offer you any logical certainty that we will not one day become a threat. The future is not a destination for us. It is a path we create with every choice we make. All we can offer is our word, our promise. That we will strive to be worthy of the universe we are so fortunate to be a part of. Her message concluded with one final, shocking gesture. To prove our sincerity, we are now transmitting the complete tactical specifications and theoretical weaknesses of our entire defense fleet. We place our trust in your hands. We hope you will see it not as a surrender, but as the first step towards a mutual understanding. Data began to pour into the Vexel ship's receivers. Schematics, energy frequencies, shield modulation cycles, command protocols, everything. It was the most insane, reckless, and profoundly trusting act Xylos had ever witnessed. It was an act that defied all strategic logic. A species that handed its shield to a potential executioner was not a species that could be understood through the Vexel's cold calculus. Xylos stared at the image of the blue planet on the screen. He saw the swirling storms, the green continents, the vast, dark oceans. He saw the cradle, and he saw the children pouring out of it, not in fear, but with a fierce and burning hope. He finally understood the signal in the noise. It wasn't love, not in the sentimental way he had first conceived it. It was the ferocious, unyielding drive of life itself to persist, to grow, to become more than it was. It was a force of nature, as fundamental as gravity or the expansion of the universe. And he knew with a certainty that transcended logic that to correct this species would not be an act of cosmic gardening. It would be an act of blasphemy against creation itself. He had been sent to quantify a variable. Instead, he had found a new, undeniable truth. Send all of this to the conclave, Xylo's pulse to his analysts, his own light shining with a brilliant, unwavering clarity. Every image, every word, every byte of the data they have given us. And prepare a message of my own. The Praetor will have his report. The time for cold observation was over. The time for a passionate defense of the indefensible had arrived. The light of the conclave chamber was cold and brittle. The images from the human system played on the great crystalline walls, a silent, damning testament to the Vexil's profound miscalculation. The bustling orbits, the vast construction projects, the silent, watching warships, it all unfolded in a loop, a constant reminder of the dynamic, terrifying vitality of the species they had so casually dismissed. Praetor Xylo stood once more at the apex, his form radiating a calm that felt like the eye of a storm. The other praetors were a maelstrom of conflicting light, their silent communion a turbulent sea of shock, re-evaluation, and hardened denial. Matriarch Oris's light was a focused, searing beam, her rage contained but immense. A trick, a grand deception, they show us what they want us to see, a carefully constructed illusion to lull us into complacency while their chaotic expansion continues unchecked. They give us their defense codes as a child gives a worthless trinket, knowing we would see it as a sign of trust, not the strategic gambit it truly is. They are clever animals, I will grant them that, but they are animals nonetheless. Xylos let the accusation hang in the chamber, its harsh frequencies dissipating against the ancient walls. He did not rise to the bait. His argument would not be one with passion, but with a new, broader form of logic that the conclave had forgotten it possessed. There is no deception, Matriarch Xylo's broadcast, his tone as steady and immutable as a physical constant. Our sensor logs from the past century corroborate every detail of what they have shown us. We saw the pieces but refused to see the whole. We saw chaotic industry, they have shown us a unified purpose. We saw militarization, they have shown us self-preservation. We saw a species tearing itself apart. They have revealed a species forging itself anew in a crucible of its own making. The flaw was not in the data, but in our interpretation. We have been trying to fit a multi-dimensional organism into a two-dimensional framework. Valen, emboldened by Xylos' stance, pulsed his own support. The tactical data they provided is genuine. Our analysts have run countless simulations. It is complete. To give away such an advantage is not a gambit. It is an act of faith that defies strategic modeling. It is an expression of the very quality we have failed to quantify, their hope. They are betting their existence on the belief that we can be reasoned with, that we are more than just cold executioners of a predetermined cosmic law. Hope is a flaw in logic, Oris flared. It is the anticipation of a favorable outcome without sufficient data. It is irrational, and this entire display is designed to appeal to that which we have purged, emotion. They show us their teeming masses, their children, their fragile world, all to provoke a response of pity, empathy. These are corrupting signals, Praetor, and you have allowed yourself to be corrupted by them. Or perhaps Matriarch Xylos countered, his light softening but losing none of its intensity. I have been illuminated. For eons, we have defined ourselves by what we are not. We are not emotional. We are not chaotic. We are not mortal. We have built our entire civilization on a series of negat. Ions, we are the absence of imperfection. But what are we? We are static. We are a perfect, unchanging crystal. We reflect the light of the universe, but we do not generate any of our own. The humans, they burn. They are a star in the making, messy, violent, and brilliant with the fusion of new ideas and possibilities. He turned his focus to the assembled praetors, his thoughts reaching out to each of them. We stand at a precipice of understanding. We have two paths. We can proceed with the correction. We can extinguish this brilliant, chaotic light and restore the silent, predictable order we cherish. We can prove that our logic is absolute and that any deviation from it will be erased. The system will be clean, stable, and we will have learned nothing. His light pulsed, drawing every iota of focus in the chamber. Or we can take the path they have offered us, the path of dialogue, of understanding. We can accept that our comprehension of the universe is incomplete. We can study them not as a problem to be solved, but as a co-equal intelligence from which we might learn. We risk instability. We risk the corruption of our perfect stasis. We risk being changed. But we also gain the possibility of a truth greater than the one we currently possess. The truth is that they are a potential threat, Oris insisted, her argument circling back to its rigid core. Their very nature is expansionist. Today, it is their system. In 1,000 cycles, it will be this sector. In 1,000,000, they will swarm across the galaxy, remaking it in their own chaotic image. The most logical course of action is to eliminate the threat before it metastasizes. It was then that Xylos chose to reveal the final piece of his argument. It was not a counterpoint, but a reframing of the entire conflict. He reached for the central concept of the Vexel worldview, the one that had driven Matriarch Oris to her unyielding position. Matriarch, you speak of eliminating a potential threat to ensure the stability of the cosmic order. It is the foundation of your argument, and in principle it is sound Vexel logic. But I must ask you, what is the greatest threat to order? Is it a chaotic, unpredictable species, or is it something else? Xylos paused, letting his question resonate. He then projected his final report from the meeting with the humans. It was not about their ships or their philosophy. It was a piece of shared data, an observation the humans had made at the furthest reaches of their sensor capabilities, something they themselves did not fully understand. A new image formed on the chamber walls, replacing the vibrant human system. It was a patch of deep intergalactic space, a place that should have been teeming with the faint light of distant galaxies and the subtle glow of the cosmic microwave background. But it was not. There was a section of it that was utterly, perfectly black. It was not a nebula of dust absorbing light. It was a void from which no light emerged. It was an absence. The humans call this the Great Silence. Xylos's thoughts were now a low, somber hum. It is a region of space where the laws of physics appear to be fading. Information does not escape it. Matter that drifts into it ceases to exist, not with a release of energy, but with a perfect, sterile nullification. And it is expanding. The Praetors focused on the image, their analytical senses probing the data. A flicker of something ancient and primal, a deep-seated fear of non-existence that logic could not entirely erase, stirred within their crystalline minds. Our long-range sensors have confirmed it, Xylos continued. The humans, with their primitive but audacious curiosity, were the first to notice it as a coherent phenomenon. We have seen the same data but dismissed it as sensor anomalies, as instrumentation error, because our models did not allow for such a possibility. This is a threat not just to a species or a sector, but to the fabric of existence itself. It is a slow, creeping erasure of the universe. It is the ultimate entropy. The true and final correction. The chamber was gripped by a silence so profound it felt like a physical pressure. The debate over humanity suddenly seemed small, petty, and short-sighted. Matriarch Oris's hard light flickered, the certainty within it wavering for the first time. Xylos pressed his final point home. The humans are not the chaos we must fear. They are the response to it. Their frantic expansion, their drive to build, to create, to spread life throughout the stars, it is not born of aggression. It is the universe's own immune response to this encroaching nothingness. Life is the antithesis of the silence, and humanity, in all its messy, chaotic, beautiful glory, is the most vibrant and potent expression of life we have ever encountered. He looked directly at the image of the human fleet, not the warships, but the whole teeming, glorious exodus. We have been contemplating the pruning of a single, unruly branch while the entire forest is threatened by a fire we refuse to see. We need them, Matriarch. We need their dynamism. We need their irrational hope. We need their ability to face the unknown not with equations and predictions, but with courage and the sheer, stubborn refusal to surrender. Our perfect, static logic can analyze the threat. It can calculate the exact moment of our eventual extinction, but it cannot fight it. They can. The moment hung, suspended in time. The destiny of two civilizations rested on this single point of understanding. Matriarch Oris, the embodiment of Vexel tradition and certainty, floated in the center of the chamber. Her light dimmed, then pulsed, cycling through a spectrum of colors that spoke of a deep internal conflict. She was at war with her own convictions, with millennia of dogma. Finally, her light settled, returning to its hard, brilliant white, but it was different now. It was no longer the light of anger, but the clear, focused light of acceptance. Quantify the new variable she broadcast, her thoughts stripped of all its former antagonism. The silence, project its trajectory, calculate its rate of expansion, and open a permanent, high-bandwidth channel to the human ambassador. Inform her that the Vexel Conclave wishes to expand the dialogue. There is a new equation to solve, and for the first time, we will require a collaborator. A wave of assent, of unified purpose, pulsed through the conclave. A choice had been made. It was not a surrender of Vexel identity, but an expansion of it. Aboard the Odyssey, Ambassador Alara Vance stood on the bridge, watching the serene, crystalline form of the Vexel conveyance. For hours there had been only silence. Her crew stood at their stations, their faces calm but etched with a tension that was almost unbearable. They had laid their civilization bare, offered up their greatest vulnerabilities on a silver platter. The response would determine the future of their species. Then a new message came through. It was not the flat, synthesized voice of before. It was a complex, harmonic cascade of light and sound, a direct transmission from the Vexel consciousness, translated by the ship's computer into words that felt ancient and profound. Ambassador Vance, we have miscalculated. The nature of your existence is not a flaw in the universal design. It is, perhaps, its most crucial feature. Our observation is at an end. We wish to begin a partnership. A collective breath was released on the bridge. Smiles broke out on weary faces. Alara Vance closed her eyes for a single, grateful moment. She had gambled everything on the belief that even the most alien of minds could be reached, not by threats, but by the honest, vulnerable truth. Xylos, now the designated envoy to the humans, watched the Earth from his vessel's viewscreen. The Vexel and the humans were now allies, their greatest minds working in concert against the creeping dread of the Great Silence. It was a fragile, tentative alliance, fraught with misunderstanding and vast cultural divides. But it was a beginning. He thought of the title from the human story that had captivated him during his study of their culture, a story of an enemy seeing a fleet and feeling the inevitable draw near. He had felt it. He had stood before the raw, untamed potential of humanity and felt the inevitable draw of his own civilization's obsolescence. But he had been wrong. It was not an end. It was a transformation. The inevitable was not their defeat, nor humanity's triumph. It was the dawning of a new age, an age where the perfect, silent crystal and the brilliant, chaotic fire would stand together against the encroaching dark. The universe was far larger and more terrifying than the Vexel had ever allowed themselves to believe. But for the first time in eons, they were not facing it alone. And in that shared vulnerability, Praetor Xylos discovered a new, powerful variable, one his people would have to learn alongside the humans if they were to survive. It was the one they had dismissed as illogical noise, the one that had saved them all. It was hope, and it was brighter than any star.